So thanks again. Good morning. My name is Thomas Jastinsky from the European Copper Institute, part of Copper Alliance, mainly involved in European research projects. One of them is Helios for innovative batteries now. Helios is part of the COLLABAT cluster of 4 projects, and the COLLABAT cluster is the initiator of this very interesting webinar today on the battery passports. So I hand over to Sohag from TVS, will give us an intro speech just to set the frame. And please start with a short introduction on yourself, Sohag, and then yeah, the floor is yours, and you can go and start. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. So thanks for having me today. It's truly a pleasure to see such a strong interest in the topic of the battery passport. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to engage with so many of you on this topic. So my name is Sohag. I serve as the head of product for Technovative Solutions Limited. Over the next 20 to 25 minutes, I aim to provide a very high-level overview of the topic of the battery passport, including its implementation timeline, scope, essential focus on data requirements, the management of it. We'll also delve into some of the kind of more obvious challenges the industry may face as the initiative progresses. While today's discussion is not a demonstration of our solution, I will take the liberty to kind of highlight a few areas where TVS, as we're known, is making strides in this space. Okay, so let's get going. Right. So first of all, who are we, right? Technovative Solutions, or TVS as we are known, we operate at the cutting edge of research and software development, essentially running like a startup. Although our founder affectionately refers to us as a tech incubator. For over a decade, based in Manchester, UK, our team of 70 plus researcher and software developers or software development professionals has been pushing the boundaries when it comes to manufacturing, robotics, automation, battery technology, environment analysis, among many other areas, as you can see on the screen. Currently, we are leading the charge on approximately 30 EU-funded projects, working very closely with an extensive list of partners to forge meaningful relationships and essentially drive innovation forward. Today, I'm really honored to be joined by our founder and CEO, Dr. Fahim Chowdhury, who you will hear from later on. He's part of the panel. And he will delve deeper into some of the topics that I introduce throughout my slot. Okay, so first of all, I want to kind of get back into basics and talk about the topic around the digital product passport before I talk about the battery passport itself. So what is DPP? It's essentially a tool for collecting and sharing product data throughout its entire life cycle, which is then used to illustrate a product's sustainability, environmental and recyclability attributes. It ensures sustainability throughout its life cycle by providing information in various categories, including general information about the product itself, or when it comes to battery, it's about the battery, labels and certification, carbon footprint, supply chain due diligence, materials and composition, circularity and resource efficiencies, again, performance and durability as well. And it's very relevant when it comes to battery, right? The performance and durability. So why do we need it? It's at the forefront of facilitating a shift towards a circular economy, aiming to minimize waste and enhance the longevity of resources and products. It solves the long-standing issue of transparency and traceability in the production industry. It enables all stakeholders, including businesses, consumers, governments, to optimize the use and reuse and recycling of valuable resources contributing to more sustainable world. Finally, EU has enshrined these as part of regulations. So there's legislative backing as well for that. So when it comes to the timeline, I will kind of talk about it later as well, but this initiative sets a clear timeline for adoption, with batteries expected to be the first industry to implement DPPs by the beginning of 2027, and other sectors to follow by 2030. Which demonstrates, EU's strong commitment around enforcing the sustainability practices. So who will be impacted? Essentially, the whole supply chain of a product. Every single actor from material supplier to the end consumer will have access and some part to play in creation of the passport itself. Okay, next slide. I kind of mentioned about EU's commitment, right? I mean, which is very, very clear when you look at the aggressive timeline and every other activities they're doing at the moment. So here you can see how DPP is essentially, the link between all of the other product regulations that have kind of come about, trying to focus and promote circularity and sustainability. They see DPP as the fast regulatory mover at scale. They're mandating DPP across various different industries with a clear timeline, again, starting with battery industry in 2027, followed by others like textiles, furniture, and plastics. And DPP regulation will have major impacts on the global supply chain, since almost nothing is produced and then sourced within the same geolocation anymore. If we take textiles, for example, almost all of the supplies are actually coming from Asia into the EU market. So how the regulations gets implemented will have a massive impact on global supply chain as well. So I think I've already kind of talked about the timeline. Again, you can see here, 2027 February is when the battery passport is getting mandated. But beyond that, by 2030, there will be other product groups that's coming in, and we know for sure textiles, furniture, and plastic will be one of those product groups. Okay, the next slide. Now talk about digital battery passport, right? A bit of context here. So efficient battery management is vital for sustainable transport, renewable energy adoption, and meeting the Paris climate goals while conserving resources and securing materials. The concept of battery passport just didn't pop up out of nowhere. March 2022, EU launched the Sustainable Product Initiative, which included the proposal for eco-design for sustainable products and regulations, which sets the stage for DPP to facilitate the transition to a circular economy across various product categories. Even before ESPR, EU introduced a new battery regulations, which is EU 2023/1542, which kind of replaced the battery directive we had, which was 2006/66 EC, also updated some of the existing regulations. Then you have August 2023 when the new EU battery regulations comes into effect, mandating comprehensive lifecycle management for batteries, including the use of digital battery passport for certain types of batteries. And as I kind of mentioned before, 2027 when the battery passport becomes mandatory for EV batteries, for LNT, which is the light means of transport batteries, as well as some of the other industrial batteries with a capacity of greater than 2 kilowatts. So moving swiftly, talking about the scope, as I kind of mentioned just now, there are three main groups of batteries that will be in scope, but they all are going to be with a capacity greater than 2 kilowatts. So EV, kind of straightforward, we know what they are. We also have the light means of transport, LNT batteries, for example, e-bikes and e-scooters. When it comes to industry battery, these batteries are used in agricultural activities, energy storage, traction in other transport vehicles, for example, rails, ships and boats, aviation, etc. So that's the kind of scope for the battery passport to start with. So now let's talk about data requirements. The EU battery regulation mandates comprehensive data requirements for the battery passport, which includes, general battery and manufacturer information, for example, the battery model itself, manufacturer information like the name and date, etc. We also have materials and composition data, looking into the critical raw materials and battery chemistry, etc. Environmental, social impact data, which will kind of go into the carbon footprint, LCA type of data, etc. Supply chain due diligence data as well, around all of the due diligence reports, sustainability report, recyclability and end-of-life management data, which is around the recycle manual, disassembling manual, spare parts information, and at the end, you also have the battery performance data, which I kind of touched on at the beginning. These are going to be very much your dynamic data coming from the BMS system. The battery project, the battery pass project has been doing an amazing job. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the battery pass project, but yeah, they've been doing an amazing job interpreting the regulations and coming up with guidance around this. And we are leveraging their work rather than reinventing the wheel when it comes to the data requirements. Okay, next slide. It's around the data management. So there are 4 key areas that I want to kind of talk through. First of all, how do we access the data, right? So the battery passport needs to be accessible through a QR code. So this code, it needs to be adhering to the international standards and accessibility, must be clearly displayed and permanent on the battery or its packaging. I mean, by now we probably all know what a QR code looks like. QR codes can be accessed via a device with a camera. Now, in terms of the access groups, there are 3 main groups that will have access to the battery passport. Broadly speaking, you have the general public. They have access to a list of battery model information, to receive information about batteries placed on the market and their sustainability requirements. When it comes to consumers, this type of information will help them to kind of make decisions based on what they care about, right? Because we know the generation and the world is actually becoming more and more environmental savvy, right? So everyone wants to know the footprints, carbon footprints, and all that kind of data before they want to make a decision, if they want to buy such products or not. There will be notified bodies and market surveillance authorities and the commission itself. So this group will have access to results of compliance test reports on the battery model, detailed information such as composition, part numbers, dismantling information, safety measures, etc. And then on the third group, we will have any kind of natural or legal person with a legitimate interest, again, looking into the performance information of the battery, durability, in-use information, the battery status, etc. Various stakeholders will have appropriate levels of access to the data based on their needs and roles following differentiated data access models. So, depending on which user group you belong to, you will have certain limitations of what you can see and what you can't see, which is also, again, recommended by EU. So essentially, we're just following that differentiated model. When it comes to data storage, the battery regs suggest a decentralized data system for storing data for the battery passport, which should be maintained by the economic operators, allowing flexibility and dynamism. It is market driven, implying that it can adapt to the needs and innovations of the market more readily. Economic operators have the autonomy over the data, how they want to manage it, and which kind of suits their operations and compliance requirements, right? Now, when it comes to data security, the decentralized model of storing data reduces the risk of single net point of failure anyways. So that's by design. It's just a great model to go with. Economic operators are responsible for the data, but they may authorize companies like us to store the data on their behalf. These service operators, as in us, we are not going to be we're not going to be allowed to sell, reuse, or process the data beyond what is necessary for compliance and operational purposes. The industry is also going for a distributed ledger technology to apply greater encryption, transparency, and traceability, mandating kind of immutability. Once a transaction is recording on a blockchain, it can't be altered or deleted by any single entity. This immutability ensures the integrity of the data stored on the ledger, making it highly resistant to tampering and fraud. From TVS's perspective, we are keeping the data security and privacy at the heart of our DPP solution. We have made our DPP interoperable and working closely with Container-X for data standards. We're also working with Gaia-X project in relation to the federated data infrastructure. Okay, so what challenges the industry might face when it comes to implementing the battery passport? So again, this is not an exhaustive list. These are some of the more obvious ones that I wanted to kind of highlight. So the first and foremost, the data collection and standardization. So gathering comprehensive lifecycle data for products can be really complex, especially for companies that haven't historically tracked detailed environmental or sourcing information. The lack of standardized data formats can hinder the interoperability between different systems and sectors, complicating the integration of the product passports. Data changes, again, when it comes to handling data changes, which results from, say, a repair event or any other follow-up events after a vehicle has been sold, those events and the information about those events can get lost easily in the process. So, that might be a challenge. We also have the challenge around the heterogeneous battery performance indicator. So currently, if you look at the industry, the battery performance indicator calculation processes are heterogeneous. So, it needs to be harmonized to be acceptable by the stakeholders globally, right? The other issue is going to be, again, it is noted that the remanufacturing and repurposing or any process around certain treatment requires a new battery passport for their battery. And the challenge here involves updating the static data like sourcing information or rated capacity, that may be altered during the processes. We also have issues around auditability, right? The challenge lies in verifying the accuracy of the data that spans the entire life cycle of the battery, from design to end of life, especially since some dynamic data points can't be retested afterwards. We also have issues around the economic and market acceptance. Companies may just look at it as a cost, right? And the value prop might not be understood properly among the supply chain actors, where I think the authorities like EU or any other government authority will have a big role to play. Again, similar vein, global regulatory variances, right? If you imagine, different countries, different continents coming up with, very different type of regulations, that will definitely complicate the adoption of the product passport. As I kind of mentioned before, this passport will have impact on the global supply chain. So yeah, these are the kind of more obvious challenges I think the industry kind of might face, but again, not necessarily the list of all challenges, right? I'm sure the panel might discuss a few more, and you might also kind of know about a few other challenges that the industry might face. Okay, so the next slide kind of talks a bit about what TVS is doing and what our kind of pilot looks like. So this is a kind of proof of concept passport solution that we are piloting with some of our industry partners at the moment. The QR code that we create will be printed on the battery of the on the body of the battery, and when viewing the passport, it will show the dynamic BMS data as well, which is coming from the BMS system directly with a regular interval. It could be a day, it could be every 7 hours, it could be every 2 weeks. We can work with the industry partners to decide how often they want the dynamic data to be shown. We also make sure to provide the chain of custody history. who, what, when. You can see every single process and events there as well. Okay. The next slide kind of talks about how we are not just looking at obviously the battery passport, we're also involved in many other product groups. At TVS, we pride ourselves on being at the forefront of the technology aspects of DPP. We have successfully won multiple EU projects that fund the Digital Product Passport Initiative. You have another example on the screen here, which kind of takes you to a material passport, which you created for another product group. Can be accessed by QR code again. We're also working with other industry partners like furniture, textiles, plastics to pilot some of those domain-specific passport. Finally, I wanted to kind of focus or take the focus on some of the other projects that I kind of mentioned that we're working on at the moment, namely BASE. BASE is kind of a flagship European project when it comes to battery passport. Yeah, we are essentially building a battery passport solution through the BASE project for the industry. There are some interesting use cases that we are currently working on. We have the Frugal EV platform for Mercedes-Benz within the automotive industry. We also have the EV platform production pilot for Ford. Again, big names. We are also working on electric tugboat production pilot. And then within the industry, what we call industry battery, industry usage battery, we are working on second life electric energy storage production pilot as well. So, these will definitely result in guidance and proofs that actually, this technology works. This technology will allow us to, get circularity back on the table and get everyone talking about it as well. So, yeah, my time ends here. Please do get in touch if you want to know more about the battery passport or how TVS can help. You will have the contact details. You will have the slides as well afterwards. So please do get in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sohag, for this very comprehensive, interesting presentation. Now we have a short time for immediate clarification questions just on this presentation. Please don't ask general questions. We will probably answer this now in the panel with all the experts. But if you have a short questions to Sohag just to explain, then please do it and then don't put it in the chat again. Please put it in Q&A. And please don't put any links in the Q&A or in the chat as we don't know where this ends up. Thank you. So any questions to Sohag, please put it in the Q&A. Okay. So we have a question, Sohag, from Marcos. If I understand correctly, you provide a commercial service. How does your business case look like?
So I'm guessing the question is around what type of business cases we support, Marcus. If that's the case, essentially the price model. I'm not sure. Are we allowed to talk about the price model here on this? I guess, Marcus, this would be better if we discuss this one-to-one. Maybe you can get in touch. Maybe you can get in touch with us, and we can have that conversation, Marcus. But yeah, glad you asked that question. We have the answer, but let's have that one-to-one discussion between yourself and us.
Okay. Any other immediate questions to Sohag? Anyway, you can contact the speakers then later on directly bidirectional if you want.
Yeah, and we're gonna delve into some of those topics as I've mentioned before in the panel discussion as well. So you will have plenty of chance to kind of go into a bit more detail and reflect and ask more questions if you want. But yeah, again, if you have any questions you want to ask later, please do get in touch. You've got my contact details, and Thomas will share the slides later on as well. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sohag. If you can please stop sharing now.
Sure.
And I invite the other panelists, please, here to join us on the screen as well. And maybe just to let the audience know who you are, we start with a very short introduction round.
Thomas, we can't open the video. Okay.
Now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Maybe I can start with myself.
Yeah, please, Suna.
Yeah, my name is Suna. I'm the CEO of Artec. We are a Belgian SME. As Sohag mentioned, that we are developing DPP, particularly on the ESG tools for the OEMs and the suppliers side. I'll be happy to discuss furthermore. Maybe I can hand over to my other colleagues.
Yeah, maybe Gabriela, you can follow.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gabriela Benveniste. I'm a senior researcher at AIRE, which is the Catalonia Institute for Energy Research. And I'm responsible for the research lines on energy economics and regulation. And we are also working in the development from a methodological point of view of the environmental and circular economy and second life issues regarding the digital battery passport. So thank you very much.
Maybe then Jose, you next.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Jose Spi, the head of Sustainable Impact Division of Eurecat. Eurecat is the research center of Catalonia. My background is mainly based in the application of the LCA, LCC social life cycle assessment methodologies. We have plenty of different projects where have been applied from the development of different batteries. Thank you.
Thank you. Then maybe next, Fahim. You're muted, Fahim. We cannot hear you.
Sorry. Hi, good morning. So I'm Fahim Chowdhury from Technovative Solutions. I'm the CEO here, and the Sohag has already given a large introduction for Technovative Solutions. So here I am.
Thank you. And finally, Shaheen, please.
Morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So my name is Shaheen Jamali. I work in front of IEG. I'm the head of a competence center for monitoring on artificial intelligence. And basically at front of IEG, we are mainly working on the energy transformation and energy systems. And in regards to the digital battery passport, we are the coordinator of the BASE project, which is a Horizon funded project in collaboration with Artec and specifically TVS, which is the main platform developer. And we will be coordinating that project under European Horizon program.
Okay, thanks. So Sohag gave us a very nice overview on what was the battery directive, became the battery regulation, and what are the impacts here. But let's go a little bit more into the details. So the battery regulation 2023, the battery passport implementation foreseen 2027. How does is there a linkage? Does the battery regulation need to adapt to technical legal feasibility? So how will be the discussion between technology providers, researchers, industry, and policymakers on the other side? And let's maybe start with this. And the second one would be then outside the battery regulation, we have critical raw material acts, Fit for 55, other framework policies. How will this interact or be affected by battery passport? So any views on this here?
Who's taking this question?
That's a question to all of you, so just feel free to jump in, I think. So the interaction between maybe researchers, industry, and regulators and policymakers. So how do you feel this between we have the battery regulation and we have the roadmap for the battery digital passport? How will this interaction work in practice, or Any challenges?
It's a continuous process. So European Commission is working on it for a long time. There are multiple initiatives were taken based on a lot of consultations. So one of the very interesting project was SURPASS. So actually from the SURPASS they kind of laid the roadmap for the passports. All the passports will come. Then there was this another one from BATPass, which this is the places where we saw a lot of interactions and communications with the researchers, policymakers, stakeholders, and everything. And then the follow-up project is again based where again this is a big collaboration with all the stakeholders, researchers, industry, as well as a big work will be to work with the policymakers. I think these projects will lay the foundation for the interaction among the community.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sorry.
please, Jose, please.
Okay. I think that right now, I think that the policymakers have made the first attempt in trying to introduce these different commitments on the different regulations. But on the center of that, I think that the researchers of the academia has to try to elucidate how to perform or how to allocate these statements on the regulation point of view with the expectations of the different stakeholders. I think that our efforts has to be tried to link between to solve this gap between that policymakers and the expectations from the industry, because sometimes are not really linked, right? It's hard, but it is difficult. From my point of view, I think that we have a very, very important work to perform, right?
And from my side, to complement what just Fahim described also regarding the EU regulations. So in regards to the initiations and also the conduction of the projects under the Horizon Europe, what EU has basically tried to initiate or basically motivate has been in regards to, for example, collaboration between Battery for EU and BEPA association, so Global Battery Alliance. So these kind of motivations that is coming or basically being somehow dictated, that every stakeholder from researchers down to the industry needs to be collaborative, and there are a lot of initiatives such as BEPA, Battery for EU, Global Battery Alliance to be connected within all these projects. Basically is an effort to bring every player in the game together to basically go over this hurdle of connection between all the major players in the game of bringing the digital battery passport and making it a success. That has been more or less on the EU side also, how this has been basically foreseen to overcome.
And I think they're doing a very good job as well. I think you can see the investments coming in, you can see how they are hosting all of these different parties. And we've seen unprecedented level of collaboration across the whole automotive industry. You talk about the GBA, the battery pass, now we're talking about BASE and some of the other projects as well. And this is probably the first time where the whole industry is kind of waking up to kind of coming together and sharing data, talking about sharing data and achieving the end goal of, you know, circularity and circular economy and stuff like that. So this is a very good sign, I think.
Maybe it's also worth to mention here that the previous projects are also very good collaboration with the Commission, that they are also the publishing the reference architecture or the helping the following projects that helping the way towards the standardization and so on, and also the helping the supporting the regulation, not just the battery side but also the data sharing part. Maybe the Shaheen, you can mention here that the Fraunhofer efforts, that while we are structuring the base project here, that the data federation and the data sharing mechanism is one another, the supporting argument that is not just only the battery side. This is I think that the utmost the element here, the battery passport will be functioning over the sectors, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the collaboration will be the key for a successful implementation of this digital battery passport, because as it was mentioned at the beginning, I mean, it entails the whole value chain of the battery and the interaction between different stakeholders with different objectives, and also different ways of sharing data, and also putting them together to understand which kind of data is feasible to be put in, which kind of data will be also accessible. And of course, and I think it's worth also to mention that for the first time, it's going to be mandatory to have a declaration of the carbon footprint, which is the first time that it's actually something that it was not done previously from the regulation point of view. And that will entail exactly a huge amount of data coming out and in from different stakeholders, and the way they will collaborate, it also will determine the success, and that this information also it's carrying out value at the end. So yeah, collaboration, I think it's not only on the way this regulation has been prepared, but also on the way this will going to be developed further on. So that's the collaboration. I think it's the key word for the battery passport.
Great. Thanks a lot for this very interesting comments. Also to the audience, if you have a comment on this, so there's a comment question from Victor. I'm looking a lot in initiatives trying to do a digital battery passport. How do you think the EU will manage all these perspectives in a unified passport? So there's a lot of information missing and confusing for the stakeholders, according to Victor.
I can give a very brief answer. I don't know how the EU wants to do that, but from my first initial impressions initiating the base project, the idea has been that the main goal would be to bring all these initiatives that has been happening within the EU under one umbrella, not to unify them, but basically bring a very close collaboration between all of them. And although our base project will begin very shortly, beforehand, the European Commission and the Battery for EU, BEPA, has been already contacted us, and the whole idea is to initiate the base project with the foundation of collaborations with all these initiatives, such as the one that is happening in Germany or in Finland. So the whole idea is to even initiate and begin the project by collaboration between other DPP initiatives, which is a great sign that probably this unification will bring everything under one umbrella and will give it a direct path into success. That would be my first impression from the talks that have been happening.
Yeah, from a point of view. Oh, sorry, Jose, if you wanted to say
go
something.
go ahead, Gabriela.
Okay. What I want to say is that I don't see this as a barrier, the fact that there are many initiatives. I think that they were happening even before the battery regulation was issued. So I think they helped the drafting of this regulation. And I think that there's the fact that all the technical aspects that are collected in the regulation are going to mark the way that these different initiatives will need to stick. I think that's the point. I think at the end, if you want to have a battery passport, you need accepted by the European market, you need to stick to the minimum requirements that the battery regulation says. So if any of these initiatives are going to stick to this requirement, they are going to be okay. They are going to be applicable. And at the end, what is also another aspect that is being now ongoing is the preparation of a unified European standard. It's not a regulation anymore, but just a standard to unify also the way this battery passport. Of course, it's a standard. It's not a compulsory. It's not compulsory. It's something voluntary that companies can go for them. And this is going to be the way of normalizing and in a way standardizing the way the battery passport will be. But again, if you want to stick, you will need to stick to the technical aspect that the regulation says, the minimum requirements, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. There's a new question, but I think this will be covered in our following discussion. So Mohammed, please, a little bit of patience. Let's come to the next topic. Sohag, in one of your slides, you showed that the battery passport will affect the entire value chain. So how do you expect the coordination from upstream, miners, refiners, electrolyte producers, to the midstream, to the battery pack manufacturers, to the downstream, to the vehicle OEMs and end users.
Thank you, Fahim. Do you want to take the question?
Actually, every upstream, downstream, and midstream operators, they're supposed to provide the data containing the ESG, and all ESG data needs to be transferred. Of course, the economic operator is responsible for deploying the passport, but there will be coordination from the economic operator with all the value chain members to transfer their data. And there are several issues there are change with the fake data, authenticity, data tampering, etc. So I think this is where it needs to be a compliance is needed, and the economic operator really needs to work very closely to adhere to the compliance.
A point here from the question from Mohammed, maybe to add on here. All these stakeholders, upstream, downstream, today they have different policies and that they have different internal or external standards. How does the digital passport try to unify the standardization of data collection?
Yeah, so there are, first of all, there are various different initiatives, right, that EU has funded around this, right, how the data is going to be collected, shared. I think as technology providers, we also have the responsibility around, making sure that if a solution is being used by multiple parties within the supply chain, that there is some level of data standardization, right? But having said that, it's always not going to be easy, right? So from our perspective, we are looking at it in two ways. Number one, you look at a solution where different parties are coming in, and we basically collect the data in a way that is standard, not necessarily making it standard for them, but we collect it and then we make the data standard by ourselves, right? So that's taking almost a challenge off from the stakeholders in the supply chain and taking the challenge on ourselves. So that's number one. The second way of doing things would be where we literally allow the OEMs who are placing the battery in use in the market to work with their stakeholders in that supply chain to standardize some of the data. Then it becomes easier for them to create the password by using a solution. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, that it's a partnership between what the EU is doing with all of these different initiatives, but also what the technology provider companies like us are able to do. So yeah, I think it's not going to be easy, but at the same time, we are keeping all of those options open. So when it comes to actually taking the data in, depending on the requirements, policies of each of the stakeholders, we can be bespoke and we can customize our solution for them.
Well, there are different types of interoperability. So we have a European project called JIDE, Joint Industrial Data Exchange Platform. And we are developing ontology-based semantic interoperability for data exchange across the different value chain members. And this is the things that we are going to work. Also, there will be legal interoperability across the different companies. So this will also need to be looked. Technology can help a lot, and we are working on it.
Okay. So
maybe also Thomas is also we also need to mention that the Commission also underlines that this is a transition period that the OEMs and the suppliers needs to prepare themselves by the 2027. So this is the transition period that all these technical infrastructures and the regulation and the compliance should be ready for, particularly non-EU suppliers and the third-party countries to be able to operate their economical operations. So I think that's a very, let's say, the critical period, particularly to be also for the manufacturers who is, outside of the EU, providing their services and the materials and all these raw materials, mining operations and stuff. Apart from the EU, the peripheral countries, the EU is still negotiating to provide these ESGs, let's say the standards, to be able to comply with this, apart from the data sharing, but also the economical, let's say, the standards and so on. So in that side, not only the battery, but others, let's say the passports, other sectors will be compliant with this, all this industry policy of the Commission. So in 3 years, not that much. Yeah.
So now I think there is a question actually specifically around that. So the question is, are panelists confident that the EU will provide the planned guidance and standards in time for the first compliance deadline?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so. This is a great point. I think just to add to that, in April 2024, we've seen the European Parliament Commission's voted in favor of ESPR. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. And then what we expect in Q1, Q2 2025 is essentially the Commission to adopt the ESPR working plan, right? And I think that will basically allow us to work between 2025 and 2026 to get the compliance ready, and then hopefully we can we can go live February 18, 2027. The deadline has been very, very clear from EU. So you can imagine, coming up with a specific date, it's not easy. So we are very confident on this, and EU is absolutely working very hard to get everything ready as well. But you never know, right? With regulations like that impacts a whole industry, that impacts, in a way, the whole world, because obviously we live in a global supply chain world, right? So it is going to be challenging, but it looks to be promising at the moment.
And a few weeks ago, the Critical Raw Materials Act also passed in the commissions and in those parliaments. So this is another supporting element that is going to be, to meet those, let's say, set deadlines. And I think this is another supportive argument. I don't want to go that much details, but the battery, as you know, that this is an e-waste, and there's going to be a very much detailed and very enhanced e-waste regulation is on the way. So this is another, let's say, complementary regulation, which will be also showing us that this regulation,
Yeah, I think Q3 this year, EU has promised to publish its official journal for the battery passport. So that's watch this space for that. So hopefully, if they meet that deadline in Q3, we can kind of go into more detail around what that journal looks like, the content of it, and that will make some of the things more clear for us.
Actually, this was the last question on my list of predefined. So the target goal for 2027, is there something which jeopardizes this? Is there a showstopper? Can industry maybe stop the process? Do you see any major risk, or are we more or less on track?
From my perspective, I think, again, I touched on it in terms of the common challenges. So technology-wise, yes, we are on track. But again, we are talking about an automotive industry for the whole of a continent, in a way, right? And we have dependencies on, big suppliers that are outside of Europe. So it's going to be tricky to answer that question now, to say yes, everything is on track, and we're gonna be live on the given date. I think the biggest challenge is probably going to be for the organizations to realize, this is not just going to be an overhead, right? Although it is an overhead, obviously, to create a passport and to maintain a passport, it costs money. But at the same time, the value that is unlocking throughout the whole value chain, and that's the important bit, that everyone involved within the supply chain will understand that, right? If they do, I think the adoption is going to be much quicker, because essentially when you do the maths, right, with pros and cons, with the overhead, it's a no-brainer, so I think it's gonna be all right. But at the same time, it all depends on the automotive industry, not the industry as in the OEMs, to say, right, yes, we are ready, our suppliers are ready, we have a solution, and let's go ahead and kind of mark 18th of February 2027 as the go live date. And that's why we exist, right? Fahim will agree.
Yeah.
You know, our
Yeah.
company and companies like us, we are essentially working very hard now, you know, to have a solution that is viable, that is ready for all of these OEMs to come in and take advantage of. You know, you will have many OEMs who will say, you know what, we'll build our own solution in-house. But guess what? You know, that takes time away from some of the more innovative stuff they want to do with their EVs, right? So we want to take that stress on us and say, right, guys, you do what you do best. You build, you know, great innovative EV platforms for clients, and we will provide you with a platform that helps with the digital product passport or battery passport, which aims to kind of focus on circularity and circular economy. So I think if we work like that, if we work in collaboration, I think we can definitely meet the timeline.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Time is moving quickly. There's one very specific question on asset administration shell. I personally have no idea. Somebody can answer this, or maybe in written, and we move on to the next topic. So the scope of application for the battery passport, how will be the components assessed? Do components like thermal management, power electronics have their own QR code, or is it all centralized stored in one QR code?
Actually, the battery passport, power electronics are not part of the battery passport. The up to the pack level it's part of the regulation. Now the power components and other things can go under the automotive passport on the powertrain passport. Once I think by 2030, Commission is trying to also put more regulations on other products, and we will see that.
Okay, I just wanted to add something here. So apart from what it was already said, that of course we are talking about a single battery passport that is concerned the battery pack, as it was said. And again, that doesn't mean that the final manufacturer of the battery needs to carry out all the work to collect all the information and have all this information ready in this battery passport. I mean, he's the responsible of that battery, that having this battery passport, but the information and data coming from different components of this battery pack could come from the entire value chain of the battery. So it's not something that it would be full responsible, the final manufacturer, but the different components suppliers will need to provide information. So the battery passport would be at the end composed by different information coming from different actors of the value chain. So that would at least support also this. So yeah, this is what I wanted to ask.
Okay.
I think on the previous question you asked, Thomas, around the asset administration shell. I don't see a direct relationship. Having said that, if you look at the asset administration shell, which we know digital twin and how it's managed, how the data is managed around that, you can see clear similarities, right? Because let's talk about a passport for a car, right? And you want to bring in all of the different components together, including the battery, and you can see how the principle around the asset administration shell could actually help with the data exchange and how the data gets shared on a specific platform. So I can see the similarities and the connection, but I don't think it's been established as such in the industry yet. But yeah, I can see why the question gets asked.
Okay, so maybe we can move on some practical implementation issues or challenges. So finally, who will implement the battery passport? The OEM or the battery pack manufacturer?
So actually the economic operator is responsible. So who are the economic operators? It could be EU battery manufacturers who takes the battery into the market. It could be importers, can be distributors of the battery who bring battery from outside of to the EU. It can be battery remanufacturers, refurbishers or repurposers who give the battery a second life, a new life. It can be for other cases, special cases where industrial users or any individual users who imports battery directly and install it for their own use, they will be responsible. So these are like different types. So the definition is the economic operators are responsible, and these are the economic operators who will fall on that category.
To the other panelists, is this a practical good solution, or do you see any downsides, any issues with this solution of the economical operator being responsible to implement the battery passport?
Well, I think in the upcoming years, there's going to be several solutions. Like the consumer, you will get the maintenance of your battery. You will have your own, the application and the solutions which is the component which will be used to have the maintenance of your battery. But the Fahim is trying to give a basic answers. I mean, the fundamental, the PP is going to be deployed for the moment is to track the raw materials, and now the EC wants to see that how this is going to be operated. But of course, the upcoming the years, the DPP is going to be fragmented for the end user size, the B2B, B2C size, and so on. So for the moment, this is just the framework, and this is going to be just let's say year by year, or the phase one is just going to be for the moment economic operators is the OEM for the moment, but this is a shared responsibility. Who is in the game? Let's see. I mean,
the data needs to come from somewhere, right?
Exactly.
It's a chain. It's a chain of events. So
exactly, in the few years that the service operators and all involved in this game will have to the functionalize the passport functionalities, and they have to provide user-friendly solutions to their customers.
Exactly. Who will then maintain the battery passport if we do changes on the battery pack, or if there's a upgrade in the software in the vehicle, etc.? So
everyone who is involved depends on the data types. I can say that.
Exactly. So different level of users will have different level of access, and based on this one, it can be. So for instance, refurbishers or even the service level, they might have access for specific data entry, and they will do that. There will be different level of access mechanism.
But if you talk about in general the software management side of things, right? That's a given. If we are selling the software to an OEM, the expectation is that we maintain that software for them, right? We maintain the infrastructure for them. So just to answer the maintenance side of things. I think that's also kind of linked to one of the questions Marcus just asked in terms of if power electronics is also included in the pack. So I think for now, the passport is only for the battery itself. Any power electronics, including the charger, anything like that, are not in scope. Having said that, once we have electronics product group coming to play, hopefully that will allow us to do also passport for those components too. But right now, the scope and focus is within just the battery itself.
Okay. Let's come to a very tricky point: data ownership. Who will be ultimately have the propriety of the battery passport data, the full data set? Policymakers only the OEM?
I think each stakeholder of the data are the proprietor of their own data. It's the same model like you have in the healthcare. So patients provides data. This data is used in the hospitals, and then it's also used for other cases, but the data is owned by the patient. So now there are a different level of exchange mechanism, different level of agreement, and how will it work will depend, and it will be like evolve over the time. But in principle, who provides the data, it's their proprietary data, and they will define how the data can be used. There will be different data business models coming out of it. A lot of business model will be evaluated during these exploration phases, I would say.
To the other panelists, any view on this? Is this so everybody owns his own data? Is this also the common sense here?
Yeah, as we discussed in the previous discussion, I think this is gonna be also the common base, and this is gonna be who produces it and stuff. And the data ownership is also by itself is a questionable thing.
Yes.
Nothing else
It's
to
mentioned
add.
in the
Yeah.
The company or
it's
the person
definitely
that
mentioned in
generates
the
has to
regulations.
be the ownership of that.
Yeah.
Who can modify the data or should modify the data? I mean, technically, of course, that's the technical platform, but should somebody or could somebody modify the data?
No one should be able to modify the data, right? That's the whole.
Yeah, that's the appearance of the digital product passport. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's what we
So
are going to
we're
be
going with decentralized.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're going with decentralized ledger technology, right? So there's not going to be any modification. And if anyone did try to modify anything, everything it's kind of
it can be different. For instance, there are some modifications is allowed. For instance, if you're refurbishing the battery, then it's a cell level, like if the battery has been refurbished, then again authorized users who on some specific data point will be able to re-entry, but that will be also tracked, and that will be log.
So it's not so much modification but addition, right? So they can append more data to the existing block. So if you think about the blockchain, right, you'll have all these different blocks of data. If you have new events like repair, reservice, or whatever you call it, they can add more data, and we can see from the history of what's being done, how it went from A to B.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not going to be modified in that sense.
It's update, actually.
Update.
Yeah.
Let's move before we make to guarantee to have enough time to a very interesting hotspot, the LCA approach. So what is the methodology to disclose the carbon footprint of the battery inside a battery passport? Is there any approach to be used? Cradle to gate, cradle to grave? We talk about indicators. Maybe Gabriela, you can, or Shaheen, what is your view on this here?
Okay, I can start saying something. Maybe also Jose has something else to add. Okay, what it says from the regulation, it already explicits the way this carbon footprint should be accounted, and it says something in the article, in the explicit article, and then in the annex. And it says that we have to stick to the methodology that has been already drafted by the European Commission concerning the environmental footprint of batteries. And it says explicitly the way this carbon footprint should consider, which is the whole value chain. I mean, all the life cycle stages of the battery, except the use phase. And this is actually because, of course, that the performance, the environmental performance during the use phase would depend pretty much on the electricity mix, and this does not depend on the manufacturer, but also on the user. So, and of course, it also explicits the way this carbon footprint should be accounted, which is the amount of carbon footprint should be by kilowatt hour of delivered energy by the battery. And it's good also to mention that for the first time, it also says that this information should be later on verified. It doesn't say explicitly how, because at the end we are all waiting for the delegated act to take into action, but it should also be encouraged to have all this assessment done in a way that it could be verified by a third party. So it's not the point of guessing or putting information that doesn't have any reliability behind. So I don't know, Jose, perhaps that you are also working on that. Maybe you could add something here.
Yeah. I think that you have explained very well. Something that this regulation emphasizes as well, the specificity of the different assessment that you have to perform. For example, you have to include the manufacturing plant, the different specifications about the raw materials and supply chains, the chemistry as well, for sure, of the battery, the manufacturing region. All that's different things that fit up the LCA model and has to be aligned for sure with the other data that have to be already included in the battery passport. In that sense, I would like to emphasize as well that it will be not about just a number, because you have to differentiate between the different stages, which is the different carbon footprint of the different stages. Okay, it would be not only just a raw number. The battery passport had to include this separated information. And finally, for sure, the LCA study has to be it has to be public. In that sense, has to be available via web link or whatever. Obviously, safeguarding the different confidential data, and related to that has to be verified from my point of view from a third party. Yeah.
And in addition, I would like to add the point. I totally agree with Gabriela and Jose, and to complement what just Gabriela said, there has been major guidelines on LCAs published by the EU since 2013, I believe, regarding PEF and OEF rules, which would be one of the main guidelines to follow on the LCA approach, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's a comment in the Q&A for estimating carbon footprint. There's a possibility to use smart sensors. So would this be kind of an internal validation verification, or what really happens at least in the use phase? Or is it too complex and we stick to static modelings for the LCA and input parameters from ex ante?
Yeah, well, actually, as currently this is out of scope because we are not considering the use phase. It's mainly from cradle to crate analysis is being considered, but it's a very interesting way to look at it during the use phase. If the regulation asks to go for the use phase, probably that's how we have to go. But as you are saying, it's going to be very complicated. And,
it would be an addition.
Sorry, yeah, Jose.
Sorry, Fahim. Finalize, please.
No, please go ahead.
It would be a very interesting score to have, because it will reflect more or less the performance of such a battery during the entire vehicle lifespan, or even could provide some interesting information additionally to the, for example, GMS system or the BMS system, right? How these carbon footprint are being included during the use phase, and probably there are some failures into the battery that could be warned by this specified carbon footprint. I don't know, but it's just an interesting point.
Instead of lifetime monitoring verification, would it be necessary to include a third-party verification to the declared information in the LCA?
It has to be.
100%. Yeah.
That's 100%. That's must.
Yeah, the others, how do you think about third-party verification? Is always the Damocles sword for the industry, so they don't like to have this. Is there, and they propose often self-declaration, best practice examples, etc. But is third-party verification really needed here?
I think it is. Otherwise, of course, we may run into the fact that perhaps producers, or that we don't know exactly where this information comes from, and we jeopardize the whole market with fake information on it. So I think it's a must for us, and also because we should also consider that the battery passport it should be aligned. I mean, the idea of having this battery passport, it also it's aligned with the aim of the European Commission of having a more circular and more sustainable products coming into the market. So if the first point to analyze how circular, how good is my product from an environmental point of view, if this information has not been verified, of course, it loses all the credibility of the fuel information that will be around all this. So I think it's, yeah, it has to be verified. And I would like also to remark one thing that perhaps it has not been explicitly said today, that the carbon footprint declaration should be ready by 2025. So it's 2 years before the battery passport is in the market. So I think we have just 1 year ahead to have all this information ready. And I think that at the moment, this is the only concern I see, which I don't think that all the manufacturers have done their homework to have all this information ready. So I'm I just looking forward to see what information are going to be displayed in a year to come here concerning all these aspects, because it's a long process to have a full carbon footprint and verified carbon footprint already. And another issue, sorry if I'm taking it long, at the end, by 2030, what the European Commission wants to do also is to settle down like a score and define the maximum carbon footprint associated to batteries. And the idea is that each battery has lower values than the ones that have been predefined. So at the end, we need to declare lower values, otherwise our battery will not fulfill the requirements to be sold in the European market. So, I mean, it's becoming more and more complex, and I think that reliable and verified information is more than necessary at this stage.
I would like to emphasize as well that I think that the entire electric vehicle, from the perspective of the people, I think that from my point of view has a lack of transparency by the fact that many people sometimes say, okay, the electric vehicle has a greater impact than the conventional one, and sometimes it's more related to the lack of different information that it's already shared with a big audience. I think that for sure, in that sense, I think that the battery passport is an excellent opportunity to give this transparency to a whole audience, right?
And I would also like to add that in addition, basically the whole idea also has been in parallel to promote the ESGE, like environmental, social, governance, and environmental and economic indicators within the EU, and basically to have that just on top of the carbon footprint, which is the environmental. If this data that is shared is not credible and it's not verified, then it cannot be basically be an indication that the path is going in the direction of promoting circularity and transparency. So at least in some ways, there should be a protocol how to basically verify and audit these data to be credible and transparent to reach the ESG and the social goals even that the EU is aiming for. So I think that would basically be the main idea. And as Jose was basically mentioning, it has not been a common practice to share the data within the battery and automotive industry. So in the end, if the data is not even shared, let alone be tampered, then that would not be a way to reach these indicators set for the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning extend not only the carbon footprint, but really go to the whole set of ESG indicators. My understanding of GBA, the Global Battery Alliance, is that they should not only put a number to the indicator, but also kind of a label to enhance the credibility and then trying to explain why they highlight this and that. How do you see this?
Indeed, I totally agree with it. And at the same time, from my perspective, that would be in parallel to bringing the digital battery passport. One of the main aspects would be the 4 indicators, the ESG indicators, that will be the heart and the core of these initiatives. And in order to have that, I think apart from a number, a label, and interpretation, possible interpretation out of it would be a necessity to basically support these ideas and reach the goals. Other than that, if it's not understandable, if it's not transparent enough, then one cannot really trust them and even reach a goal based on them. So that would be one of the main goals to achieve here, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, these indicator sets should be the same indicator sets between the regions and between the geographies. Like the EMEA region should be the same indicator sets. This is what is going to be the future emerging problems that particularly let's say North American, let's say the alliances and the European, equivalents are more or less the same. The mindset is they are using the same indicator set for the moment, but the South Stream and the BRIC countries are trying to implement their own ESG indicator sets due to the fact that they are controlling the critical raw materials, and they want to implement to protect their own, let's say, suppliers, to protect their own manufacturers and so on. So this is going to be a bit more of the, let's say, the political and more strategical level of to implement the global level of the ESG standards and the ESG, let's say, indicator sets, which is within the base project. We will be having a very harsh moments because we will be working on across a global supply chains. But let's see how this is going to be evolved within the upcoming years. But this is what is going to be the world be facing, not just only the battery, but all over the ESG indicator sets.
Here's one very detailed questions on ESG. Should it include tax compliance along the battery value chain? Not sure if I fully understand it.
Well, where is it?
Would the social aspect of the ESG include tax compliance along the battery value chain in various governmental jurisdictions? So I think will be difficult if there are different legal frameworks to define tax compliance.
Yes, exactly. That's what we are trying. But in a practical manner, I can answer these questions that for the moment, OEM. Maybe I can give you this question. I can give you this example from our project, from the base project. For example, the port, let's say the global port is working with many suppliers across the global, let's say the suppliers, that they're asking in the social indicators that what kind of workers, what kind of, let's say, the working conditions that they are applying to their suppliers. This is going to shape of this, the ESG indicator, the social indicators of this ESG indicators or indexes. And this has to be the global, let's say, standards, but it has to be understood by the regions. If the BRIC countries are taking it like, we are working in 6 hours per day, or our working conditions is 35 hours, but this the EMEA region is working 40 hours, this is going to create imbalance, let's say, scoring, and this is not going to be implied. Or the women, let's say, working percentage of the working conditions and stuff. So you can understand that this has to be normalized within the countries, let's say average and stuff, and so this ESG is I can say that this is the most headache part of this the DPP side, and we will face it through.
Okay, great. Come to my last point, second life issues. So in many battery applications for EVs, we also consider a potential second life in local storage. But what if only we take out some modules or only the cells and not the entire battery pack? How will this be then considered, and how will be then the carbon footprint during the use phase? Is it embedded or start we from zero?
When you're making a new battery, you have a second life battery. It's a new battery. It has a new DPP, but this will be linked to the previous one. So all the cells that are coming from the previous one, it will be linked with this one, and it will have the history of that one. So you're not having old primary cells. You are having secondary cells coming from the last battery. It will be shown in its total carbon footprint and total data, total indicators. Yeah.
So in total, I can also, to complement what just Fahim described, if the battery has one life cycle, and within this life cycle, if it has a new life cycle within it that starts a new journey, so to speak, then it will be linked to the main circle in close connection with it, but at the same time, it will have a new life cycle, which is basically included or emerged from the main life cycle of the initial battery or the first battery when it was produced.
Actually, this is where we are working in the base project. We have a large demonstration with the second life battery and coming from end of life from other batteries. So we will see how it works, but it will be connected to the previous battery passports.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's an interesting question in the Q&A. So it seems that the battery passport is mainly designed or thought for lithium-ion cobalt type batteries. How open is the idea now? I mean, solid state was some years ago still far away. It seems like coming very fast. So is the digital battery passport open to all these new technologies we have on the horizon, like solid state batteries?
Well,
Or do we have to reinvent the wheel then again?
no, actually the passport technologies will be modular. So we are just reporting a lot of indicators and a lot of, they are not like, battery type dependent. So if the battery type is changed, but the performance of the battery is the same, it's new materials, so new material inventory, new material LCA needs to be done, but the passport and the IT infrastructure for the digital product passport won't be affected. Of course, it might need to be tuned and looked at it, but with a very minimal effort, it can accommodate any types of batteries.
Yeah, so there's three things, right? First of all, we need to be able to print the QR code on the body of the battery, right? So that's number one. Secondly, for the performance data, we need to be able to connect to the BMS system, right? And if those things are fine, then it doesn't matter what technology you're implying for the battery production itself, because these are separate, these are not connected, if that makes sense.
The BMS is going to give the dynamic data. So if the new types of battery will be also connected to a new BMS, they will give the dynamic data. The dynamic data will be stored and be showed. Static data are all coming from the upstream, so we'll collect those same way that we are doing. So it won't be too different.
Okay. I think here's a question to share the link to the base project, so I can maybe answer by written directly.
So just for everybody's information, because I just also saw some questions regarding the start of the base project. So the base project will start in June 2024, in 2 months, roughly 2 to 3 months. And then as soon as the project starts on that date, the website will also go online. And then I will try to also share the link through our communication to all the people also involved in this webinar. So that would be basically the timeline. Mid of 2024 till 2027, the base project will be running. And then as soon as it starts, the website also will be shared with everybody.
Okay, great. So we heard a lot about the current status. Seems we are on track. There are a lot of challenges because we are affecting the entire value chain from upstream to downstream, and data issues, data privacy issues. We have not going into this detail here today, but also the third-party verification. So there are still a lot of things to do, and collaboration between the different projects and initiatives seems the platform how R&D, industry, and policymakers can work together. This is my personal key takeaways, but now I give the floor to the panelists. Any last words, comments, wishes for Christmas?
And a harmonized approach that could bring all this different information coming from the different initiatives that are being developed around Europe concerning that big issue. I think that that such regulation has to try to make all these different efforts, but all that work that has been performed by many different companies. Here we are just a little bit example of such different initiatives that could capitalize of this great efforts, right?
Great. Yeah, me personally, I see it also as an opportunity for European industry to better interact and collaborate and create resilience. I mean, we're talking on the global world because electric vehicles are global, but anyway, we have to start in Europe and create something because we have the control and the legal framework also on the technical interactions here.
Yeah.
Okay. So many thanks to the experts, to the panelists here in the call. Special thanks to TVS for preparing the intro presentation. As I said, the recordings will be available for the audience as well as the slide deck soon. You will get the notification link. And any further questions to the base project, please address to Shaheen and the others. Thank you, and yeah.
Can I just say there might be
Thank you
some
very much.
unanswered questions, right, in the Q&A.
Yeah,
So can you take those questions and maybe we can answer them back later, and we can directly go back with an answer to those questioners.
I think some are comments and some are more
Okay.
more
Yeah,
very
I
detailed
mean,
questions. But
yeah, you can be the judge of that, right? If you decide to get some answers, let us know. We can look at those questions because
yeah,
obviously
I'll
we
forward
don't
it to you
cover
and
everything.
we can get by written. Okay, excellent.
Okay.
So many thanks and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much for having
Thank
us.
you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Have a
Bye-bye.
lovely day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.